Welcome, everyone, to vpod.ai. I'm your host, Mike, and I'm joined by our expert guest, Susan. You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit vpod.ai to get started today. So imagine missing a single note at a childhood piano recital, and 30 years later, your heart still races when you have to speak up in a harmless meeting.
Right. A 10-second embarrassment permanently rewires your nervous system.
Exactly. Today, we're looking at how that hardware works, and more importantly, how you can wire it back.
It's wonderful to be here. We're stepping into a biological landscape that, frankly, completely changes how we view our own memories.
Yeah, it's massive. We are taking you on an exploration into the modern neuroscience of fear, trauma, and post-traumatic stress.
But we aren't stopping at just the diagnosis.
No, it's definitely not.
The mission today is to understand how you can actually extinguish and rewrite your brain's threat responses. We'll be looking at behavioral therapies, new drug therapies, and even some specific breathing protocols. Because for a long time, the medical community thought of these emotional responses as, permanent scars. But we are now learning the hardware of our brain is remarkably adaptable.
Provided you know which levers to pull. Right.
Exactly. If you know the biology, you can change it.
Well, to find those levers, I think we need to clarify our language first, because we throw around words like stress, anxiety, fear, and trauma every single day.
Oh, all the time. As if they mean the identical biological thing.
Right. Like someone says they are traumatized by an email or terrified of a deadline, when they really just have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, the terminology gets tangled very quickly, so let's separate them by what your body's actually doing.
Okay, where do we start? Stress.
Yeah, stress is fundamentally a physiological response. It's an activation. Your heart quickens, your blood flow shifts, your alertness spikes.
So it's just the physical machinery turning on.
Right. You can absolutely be stressed without experiencing a single ounce of fear. Like waking up and jumping out of bed to start a busy, productive day utilizes the exact same stress response.
Okay, so if stress is just the physical activation, where does anxiety step in?
Anxiety is, it's stress projected into the future.
Oh.
Yeah, it is a physiological state of stress specifically tied to anticipating an event that hasn't happened yet. Fear is different, though.
How so?
Fear is an emotion. It combines those physiological elements of stress, the racing heart, the warming or cooling of the skin, with immediate cognitive components.
Like memories and thoughts.
Exactly. Memories, thoughts, the present context. You can't have fear without some elements of stress and anxiety, but fear is a complex response to an immediate present threat.
Okay, so then is trauma just the extreme end of that fear spectrum?
Not just the extreme end, it's an actual structural shift. Trauma is an operational definition.
What does it mean, operational?
It occurs when a specific fear becomes so deeply embedded in the nervous system that it reactivates maladaptively.
Meaning it shows up when it shouldn't.
Right. It shows up when it no longer serves you, long after the original threat has passed.
So if we liken the nervous system to a car, stress is just the engine revving. It's just RPMs, right?
Yeah, perfect analogy.
And anxiety is you gripping the steering wheel, worrying about a traffic jam that might be 5 miles down the road.
Exactly.
And fear is swerving to avoid a crash right in this exact second.
Yes.
Which means trauma is the airbag deploying every single time you sit in the driver's seat, even when the car is safely parked in your garage.
Wow, yes. That captures the biological reality perfectly. The internal circuitry has literally been rewired to anticipate a crash at all times.
Causing that airbag to deploy regardless of your actual environment.
Precisely.
Well, if trauma is the airbag deploying in a parked car, the wiring must be faulty. What's actually misfiring in our biology to cause that?
To find the misfire, we have to look at the autonomic nervous system. You have the sympathetic branch, which is your alerting system, basically your biological accelerator.
Right.
And on the flip side is the parasympathetic branch. That's your calming system or your biological brake pedal.
Are those pedals being pushed by the brain directly, or how does that work?
They are driven through a three-part mechanism called the HPA axis. That stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Okay, that is a mouthful.
It is. But basically, the hypothalamus deep in your brain spots a threat and acts as the master controller. It signals the pituitary gland near the roof of your mouth, which drops hormones into your bloodstream.
And then those travel down to your adrenal glands.
Right.
Above the kidneys.
You got it.
I mean, that seems like an incredibly long journey just to tell the body, to react to a sudden danger.
It seems like it, but it happens faster than you can consciously process.
Yeah.
And the adrenals release two vital types of chemicals.
Adrenaline being one of them, obviously.
Right, you get the immediate fast response from adrenaline, giving you that sudden physical jolt. But you also get a slow component.
Which is what?
Cortisol. Cortisol lingers.
Yeah.
And that lingering effect is vital to understanding fear because it can literally alter gene expression.
Wait, it changes your genes.
It changes their expression, yeah. Over the course of days, a cortisol wash acts like a construction crew, building entirely new physical neural circuits.
Wow. Since cortisol is building new fear highways, where exactly are those highways leading?
The central hub is the amygdala. It's an almond-shaped structure deep in the brain that serves as the final common pathway for the threat reflex.
Okay, I've heard of the amygdala.
Yeah, all sensory information, what you see, hear, remember, flows into the amygdala. It decides if you are in danger and signals the adrenal system to hit the accelerator.
So it's the panic button.
Yes, but it doesn't only output to the panic system. This is crucial. The amygdala also has a direct pathway to the dopamine system.
Really?
Yes, specifically to an area called the nucleus accumbens.
Okay, wait. I need to pause you there. I've always understood dopamine to be the reward chemical. We associate it with motivation, craving, and the feeling of accomplishment.
That's right.
So why on earth would the brain's primary threat center wire itself directly into the pleasure and reward center? That feels like a catastrophic design flaw.
It totally seems counterintuitive until you consider survival and adaptation. That connection is actually a biological backdoor.
A backdoor for what?
For unlearning. Think about it. If the threat center only connected to the panic response, we could never unlearn a fear.
Oh, I see.
By maintaining a direct line to the dopamine system, the brain retains a pathway to eventually map new, rewarding associations over previously terrifying ones.
That is fascinating. The circuitry that paralyzes us actually holds the mechanism for our recovery.
Yes, exactly. But to use that backdoor, we first have to recognize the sheer speed at which the original fear was programmed.
Right, because when we talk about programming behavior, we usually go straight to Pavlov's dogs.
Yeah.
Ringing the bell, getting the food,
It's
salivating.
classical conditioning.
But that took a lot of repetition for the dogs to learn it.
It did. Dogs learning to associate a bell with a meal takes time. Human fear circuitry, however, is designed for what we call one-trial learning.
One trial learning, meaning it happens once and it sticks.
Yes. Your biological system prioritizes your survival above everything else. It doesn't have the luxury of letting you touch a hot stove 10 times to verify that it burned.
Right, it encodes the threat instantly. We don't want to get chased by a tiger 5 times to confirm tigers are bad.
Exactly. A colleague of mine actually experienced this vividly. They visited San Francisco a few years ago.
Sorry.
In broad daylight, their rental car was broken into and their belongings were taken. A brief, isolated incident.
Oh, that's awful.
It was. But it permanently warped their view of the entire city. They made a lifelong decision never to return.
Just from that one incident.
Just from that. The brain took one specific stressful event and generalized it into a massive, location-wide threat response in a matter of minutes.
You see this in everyday life all the time, too, going back to that childhood piano recital I mentioned at the start.
Oh, yeah. Perfect example.
You walk out on stage, miss a chord, and freeze. The biological cascade in that 10 seconds, the racing heart, the flush of shame, the sheer panic is so overwhelming.
It's a massive physiological spike.
Right. And the brain flags public performance as a lethal threat. Suddenly, you are 40 years old, actively avoiding a completely harmless presentation at work.
Because the nervous system batched all those environmental cues together. The stage, the silence, the stares of the audience. It attached them all permanently to a threat reflex.
Okay, so if the brain can encode a lifelong, debilitating fear in 10 seconds flat, what does it take to undo that coding? How do we access that dopamine backdoor you mentioned?
We do it through behavioral therapies. And there is a fundamental rule in neuroscience when dealing with trauma.
Which is?
You cannot simply eliminate a fear. The file cannot just be deleted. You must extinguish the biological amplitude of the fear, and you must actively replace it with a new, positive narrative.
Extinguish and replace.
Okay.
What is the actual mechanism for doing that in a clinical setting?
Well, one of the most studied methods is prolonged exposure therapy. A patient is guided to retell the story of their trauma in incredibly rich, vivid detail.
So they can't just give a detached summary.
No, not at all. They have to speak in complete sentences about exactly what they saw, what they smelled, and how they physically felt.
But asking someone to voluntarily walk back into their darkest nightmare sounds agonizing.
It is. The initial recounting causes a massive anxiety spike. The physiological response can rival the original event itself.
Wow.
But through the repetition, the second, third, and fourth recounting of the exact same story, the physiological amplitude begins to diminish. The heart rate stabilizes. The shaking stops.
But reducing the panic is only half the battle. Right, because you said extinguish and replace.
Exactly. This is where therapies like cognitive processing therapy, or CPT, and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, enter the picture.
How do those differ from just telling the story over and over?
Prolonged exposure focuses on reducing the physical panic. CPT and CBT focus on the narrative.
Okay, the story we tell ourselves.
Right. In CPT, the therapist helps you identify stuck points. These are the flawed beliefs you develop during the trauma, like I am always in danger or I am completely powerless.
Ah, I see.
And CBT helps you actively challenge and restructure those automatic negative thought patterns.
So as the physical panic diminishes from the exposure, the prefrontal cortex, the logical meaning-making front part of your brain, can step in.
Yes, beautifully said.
It uses top-down processing to attach a new meaning to the memory. You shift from this event ruined my life to I survived this and I am resilient.
That's the replacement part.
We're literally using human narrative to talk our biology down from the ledge.
The narrative is incredibly powerful, but as you noted, talk therapies require enduring immense psychological pain to get to that point of healing.
Yeah, a lot of people drop out of therapy because it's just too hard.
Right, which is why the clinical landscape is shifting dramatically toward emerging drug therapies to accelerate this biological remapping, specifically ketamine and MDMA.
Okay, I have to push back here. Those are heavily stigmatized.
You definitely are.
Most people know MDMA as ecstasy, like a club drug, and ketamine as an animal tranquilizer or party drug. How on earth are these functioning as clinical tools for severe trauma?
It's a fair question. We have to completely separate the recreational context from the strict clinical neurobiology. Let's look at ketamine first.
Okay.
Ketamine functions as a dissociative anesthetic. Administered in a controlled therapeutic setting, it allows the patient to recount their horrific trauma from a completely detached perspective.
Like watching a movie of yourself instead of feeling like you are actually trapped in the scene.
Exactly. They recount the story without the original crippling emotional intensity.
So the heart rate doesn't spike.
Right. And by keeping the emotional amplitude near zero during the retelling, ketamine dramatically accelerates the extinction of the old experience. The brain learns the memory can be accessed without triggering a physiological crash.
That basically lowers the shield so the cognitive therapy can actually take root.
Exactly.
MDMA must operate on a totally different mechanism, though, given its reputation.
It does. It creates a chemical state, unlike almost anything we naturally experience. We mentioned dopamine earlier, the neuromodulator for motivation and seeking. You also have serotonin, which governs contentment and feeling safe with what you currently have.
Oh, okay.
Normally, these two act a bit like a clutch and a gas pedal. Usually, you have to disengage one to fully utilize the other. If you are deeply content, you aren't intensely seeking.
So MDMA changes that mechanical relationship.
Drastically. It forces a massive simultaneous spike in both dopamine and serotonin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Patients report an immense feeling of connection, safety, and resonance.
So if you recount a traumatic memory while awash in this unique neurochemical state of extreme safety and reward,
You facilitate an incredibly fast relearning process. The brain rapidly tacks these profound feelings of safety onto the old, terrifying memory.
you are forcing the threat center to communicate directly with the dopamine reward center. It basically acts as a biological catalyst for that extinguish and replace rule.
That's it, exactly. It accelerates the process tremendously.
That is incredible. But, you know, these clinical therapies, whether it's prolonged exposure or assisted by MDMA, they aren't accessible to everyone.
No, unfortunately they aren't.
So if you are sitting at home right now dealing with lingering anxieties or fears that might not meet the clinical threshold for PTSD, but they still dictate your choices, what can you do on your own? How do you recalibrate your threat reflex?
There are highly effective self-directed tools, though they might seem counterintuitive at first glance.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
A primary one is a breathing protocol called cyclic hyperventilation. It takes about 5 minutes a day.
Hyperventilation.
Yeah.
That sounds like the opposite of calming down.
Bear with me. You take very deep inhales through the nose, immediately followed by exhales through the mouth. You do this repetitively for about 25 to 30 breaths.
Okay.
Then you fully exhale, completely emptying your lungs, and hold your breath for 25 to 60 seconds. You repeat that cycle until your 5 minutes are up.
Holding your breath with empty lungs after hyperventilating sounds incredibly stressful.
It is. It deliberately triggers the release of adrenaline. You are aggressively pushing the accelerator on your autonomic nervous system.
Okay, but why? Why would someone already dealing with anxiety want to intentionally spike their adrenaline?
Because you are training your brain to handle the stress response in a controlled, self-directed environment.
Ah, okay. Like exposure therapy, but just for the physical sensation of stress.
Exactly. By deliberately inducing autonomic arousal, your prefrontal cortex learns it can navigate and survive that state. You introduce microstressors to build resilience against major stressors.
So instead of trying to artificially calm yourself down all the time, you teach your body that it is perfectly safe to be revved up.
Yes. Now, I do need to explicitly caution that anyone with a clinical panic or severe anxiety disorder should avoid this practice, as it can trigger a full panic attack.
That makes sense.
But for the general population, it absolutely raises your threshold for stress.
Good to know. Now, beyond breathing, are there biochemical tools, like something you can take to lower that baseline anxiety?
There are. 2 over-the-counter supplements show clinically significant results in double-blind studies for lowering baseline anxiety. The first is saffron.
Wait, saffron. The exact same saffron used as a spice in cooking.
The very same. Research shows that 30 milligrams of orally ingested saffron has a reliable anxiety-reducing effect that is actually measurable on standard clinical anxiety scales.
That is wild. What's the second one?
The second is inositol. It is a type of sugar naturally found in the body and in certain foods.
Okay.
Studies show that when taken at a high dose, 18 grams daily for a full month, its potency in reducing anxiety symptoms is on par with some prescription antidepressants.
18 grams. That is a substantial dose.
Yes.
But rivaling prescription meds without the same barrier to entry is huge.
It's very promising. But there is a crucial timing rule for both of these, and it ties back to the fundamental mechanism of unlearning fear.
Which is?
You must never take saffron or inositol right before a therapy session, an exposure exercise, or a stressful event you are actively trying to overcome.
Really, that goes against every instinct. If I'm facing my fear, I want my anxiety to be as low as possible.
Yeah. I know it sounds backward, but if you artificially suppress the anxiety spike with supplements before doing the therapeutic work, the brain never learns to decouple the panic from the memory.
Oh, because the panic isn't there to extinguish.
Exactly. You have to experience the physiological spike of anxiety while recounting the narrative in order to extinguish it. You need the spike to do the rewiring.
So you use the supplements outside of those sections simply to bring your everyday baseline down.
Correct.
You need the raw materials of the stress response active to mold them into something new. The hardware has to be turned on to be reprogrammed.
Yes. Brilliantly summarized.
So fear is not a permanent life sentence. It is a biological circuit. It's an almond-shaped structure in your brain and a chemical brake and accelerator in your nervous system.
And it can be changed.
Whether you are working with a clinician using cognitive processing to challenge your narrative, or exploring emerging chemical therapies that hack your dopamine system, or just sitting in your living room deliberately practicing stress breathing, you have the biological hardware to overwrite your own code.
And understanding that hardware leaves us with a deeply provocative question.
Okay.
Well, we have mapped the exact pathways to extinguish and rewrite our darkest, most painful memories by manipulating dopamine and narrative.
Right. We're learning to neutralize the worst things that have happened to us.
Exactly. But if we understand the biology well enough to erase the impact of trauma, how long will it be before we can use these exact same biological pathways to artificially manufacture completely positive, life-affirming memories of events you never actually experienced?
Wow. If we can rewrite the past to heal, we might one day write a past that never existed at all. That is a staggering thought to end on. Remember, you hold the keys to your nervous system, and you get to decide how the engine runs. Thank you for joining us in this exploration today. See you next time.